Hey kids, it's yours truly, Jeff and Mitra here, bringing you another day in London. We are excited that the sun's out, even though it is deceivingly cold.
It's literally there to give light. That's it. There's no warmth. My hair is wet. I feel every Italian grandmother crossing herself right now, but in my defense, we're in a hotel with no hairdryer.
That's our bus.
Bye.
Bye, bus.
Where are we going, Jeff?
We're going to the British Museum.
Woo! The Temple of Looted Artifacts.
I have never been in there before. I'm very excited. Let's go see some artifacts. Our goal today is to film a bunch of Did You Knows. We are starting with the British Museum. We're going to try and make our way to Big Ben. We're probably going to go to Parliament. Just film as much as we can.
Did you know the British Museum is older than the United States of America?
Really? We're going to take you along on the adventures today. Are you ready?
I can't wait for all the comments on my social media. It's stolen, give it back. I know, but it's not in my power to make that decision.
Right.
I'm just trying to talk about them.
So we're going to be doing this most of the day, and then we have a very exciting dinner plan too, which I'm not going to talk about yet. You'll see. English breakfast. Stonehenge. We are here at the British Museum. Mitra's prepping for her first Did You Know? Meanwhile, I'm filming a vlog. Tour guide Mitra,
Yes,
let's have a
hi.
quick conversation about where all this art comes from. Are we gonna go there?
We're gonna go there.
All right. Give me a 90-second version.
90-second version.
I know.
I mean, obviously we know that Britain was the biggest empire, especially around the 1700s of the world at the time, the Western world at the time. And they were a colonizing empire, which means that they're
No.
all over the world. But even America was still a British colony back then, hence no Declaration of Independence quite yet. So a lot of the artifacts from enslaved Africans that we have in this museum come from the slave ships that went across the Atlantic to America. But there is actually a pretty new take to try to highlight the colonizing part of these museum histories. They are talking about it and they are dealing with it themselves. There's also a trajectory in the museum that you can follow the steps from colony to empire in here. But it's not always quite as straightforward as people think it is, of just giving things back, because one, a lot of nations weren't those nations back in the day. For example, Greece was under Ottoman Empire rule. Greece did not have their own independence until the late 1800s. And I'm not justifying it, but I'm just saying in terms of like drawing maps, it can be a bit more complicated. And then we have excavational programs where, let's say the British are helping with excavations in Egypt. Well, then it was an actual agreement that they would split the artifacts in half. So some of it is given by the government of the time quite freely to countries like England. So it's not all stolen. A lot of it is appropriated in all the wrong manners. And then of course you have colonial officers that were, for example, in India, and then they would commission things from local artisans and then would also bring it back here. Or they would kill people in fights. Like there's a beautiful blue sword from a sultan from a war in India, but the sultan was killed and they took it as loot of war. So it's a very complex dynamic. And if we want to talk about things that we take of people looting in names of times of war, then we also have a very current and modern issue running with this conversation as well. It's not an easy conversation to have. While all historians agree that European museums are built on colonial pasts, it really is a hard conversation to have realistically of where do you draw the line of what should be returned where.
That's a very complicated situation that we're all in.
I mean, the thing is, right, so when people want to do the argument like, oh, it's better that these museums have it or they would have been destroyed in their countries. Well, those countries perhaps were not in the state of taking care of their own artifacts, but because of these countries wreaking such social, economical havoc and war on them. And so it becomes really a double-edged sword to have this conversation to begin with. I mean, really. But then it's also some pieces. There's one piece here that I really can't wait to highlight to people. It's from West Africa. It is a bronze statue from when Europe was in the Renaissance. And when he first came here, people refused to believe it was from the African continent because it really was the first time that West-centric white privilege was challenged. They refused to believe that anyone outside of Renaissance Europe could produce such high-quality sculpture. It's really cool.
So my brain just opened up in ways I never thought were imaginable. You see, that's why I travel around with a personalized tour guide everywhere I go. Because if I had come here without you, I would have just been like, ooh, cool, a rock. Turns out it was the Rosetta Stone. Okay, so we're filming some reels about some of the artifacts here at the British Museum, and we're talking about how a lot of the pieces, including the Rosetta Stone, would have become walls.
And the issue is a little bit like this. Like, so Venus de Milo almost gets made into kiln powder and made into a house wall. The Rosetta Stone is found as a house wall. And in either case, it's a French Navy officer who realizes that they're valuable and wants to buy them for a collection. And in the case of the Rosetta Stone, the French actually will then lose their Rosetta Stone to the British in the Treaty of Alexandria when they hand over a bunch of artifacts. Do you see what we mean when it's like really complicated topics about, like at the time, like even the Rosetta Stone itself, like the reason why it's managed to be deciphered is because there's Greek on it together with hieroglyphs and the Demotic, which was like everyday Egyptian language, the cursive style writing. But Egypt was under Greek rule at that point, right? So Egypt wasn't even the Egypt you think Egypt is. Egypt was Greek. There was no Egyptian pharaohs on the throne. Ptolemy V is from the Ptolemy clan, and it's 2,200 years ago. So not even Egypt was Egyptian. And then thanks to them writing in Greek. Sorry, Hire keeps holding these cameras like I look like an actual...
Sorry. There, continue.
This hair is wild. Look,
No, don't stop your explanation. It's wildly fascinating.
Sorry.
You're talking about the Rosetta Stone almost becoming a wall.
Sorry. So the point is that all through history we have this issue of, you know, countries not being the countries we think they are today, and different governments. For example, look, besides the Rosetta Stone being written in Greek, and it's written in Greek because basically it's a Greek colony at that point, but before it was a Greek colony, it was a Roman colony. And that's why we have so many obelisks in Rome. But Egypt was Rome to the Romans back then, and they were Greeks on the throne. They weren't even Egyptians. So the same thing when you have Greek artifacts, well, some of them were sold, and Greece was also under Ottoman rule. It was the Ottoman Empire, it wasn't Greece. Greece gets their independence in the late 1800s. Not defending or justifying a single bit of holding on to artifacts in the 21st century, because they're very good to go back home at this point, right? I'm just saying, it's not as straightforward as people think.
Yeah.
But my point is the Rosetta Stone was a wall.
And it's the only reason we get to see it today is because?
The French lost to the Brits, and in the Treaty of Alexandria they had to hand it over to the Brits, and they shipped it over to England, and it's been here since 1802. And then we had another British who was the one that started to realize that maybe all these three languages are written equally, and it was a huge thing all the way into the 1900s for men of higher learning to also study classical Greek. But even like for theologists to this day have to study classical Greek. Like if you want to become a priest in the Roman Catholic Church, you have to study Greek because all of the early Christian writings are in Greek, ancient Greek.
Did anyone else follow how just like...
Sorry, my brain is...
Just how like rapid fire your brain was just there? No, I'm impressed. Action.
Did you know that the most visited piece in the entire British Museum is a Rosetta Stone? And in 1802, the Rosetta Stone comes to the port of hieroglyphs, the Demotic, the spoken language of the Egyptians. Now I'm just wrapping it up. Greek was the language of the educated masses. Did you know that the famous Rosetta Stone almost ended up being a forgotten house wall? That's right. In the 1700s, when Napoleon is campaigning in Egypt, one of his army officers is going to find this slab into a house wall. Realizing its value, he takes it. When the French lose to the Brits in the Treaty of Alexandria, this is handed over with other antiquities into the English hands and ending up in Britain in the early 1800s. It helped decipher the hieroglyphs to the Western world previously unknown, and that's why it was such a revolutionary find. You see, there are 3 languages on the Rosetta Stone: hieroglyphs, Demotic, which was everyday written Egyptian, and then Greek. And Greek was the key because it was the language of higher education in the West. If you want to know more cool facts about famous places in the world, follow me, I'll lead the way.
It's okay. She's really hard on herself when she doesn't get it on the first take, which for most of us, that is the reality.
I would settle for like the first 10 at this point. Oh, I was unlocked and deciphered at the same time, and it became undeciphered.
Don't we all do that? We got the Rosetta Stone reel
That was
finished.
needlessly hard.
Everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah, but why do I have to make 36 of them in a row? But you know what's hard about making these reels, which I do wish that people would have a bit more grace of understanding sometimes? Like in my head, I can already hear the complaints that I don't cover enough ground. But there are reels that are 59 seconds. Like social media, like Instagram doesn't give me more than 59 seconds. I could film longer for TikTok, but then we're double filming reels.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Which I'm starting to get actually less opposed to doing, because I would prefer to talk about certain topics for 3 minutes at least. But then I know that people are just going to sit in there and complain anyway. I feel like there are truly moments where you feel like you can't do it right. Like if I don't just harp on about how stolen a piece it is, then my comments are full of that. And then if I don't talk about a piece, why aren't you talking about that piece? And then it's always like, well, you should also say you forgot this. No, I didn't forget. Like I cannot fit stuff in. So it's trying to fit in a beginning, a middle, and the end in 59 seconds sometimes just makes me trip on my own tongue.
It's hard. It's harder than you think.
No, I don't know. I think it's probably easy for some other people. I'm just
No,
dumb.
it is really hard.
I'm just dumb.
And yeah, I mean, this is why we're going into longer form content, so we can hear more explanation behind things and complicated topics. But we just can't do it all the
I
time.
have moments where I also feel like I wonder, like, why are we putting in such an effort to actually go to these museums? There's people that have entire social media careers using photos of these objects as a green screen.
Because it's just more effective when you're actually seeing it in these places.
Is it?
Yeah.
Are we getting paid?
We're gonna get paid. It's more immersive when we're actually at the exhibit to see the objects and interact with the museum in general. And filming in a bedroom with a green screen would be way less inspiring for us to make.
I don't think so. For us to make, maybe, but not for people to watch.
I think people enjoy watching you actually travel to these places and see a place through your eyes.
They don't.
They do.
They don't.
They do.
They don't.
They do. They're watching it.
Care less.
They're watching it right now. Anyway.
We could just be in our bedrooms. We're not doing a takeover.
Mitra's holding the camera? Whoa. No, we were just having a little conversation about how Mitra feels she could film the same content and just use a green screen. But I am arguing that it's more effective that we are actually at these places.
The reason I have this argument is because we are self-financing almost every single thing we see without having any incomes to back it up. Like, we don't have a 9-to-5 Monday to Friday job, and then we do this as a hobby. This was born for me out of necessity from a pandemic of surviving to be on social media, and then it's growing. And while it's great that, like, we both have big follower numbers, I mean, for us, we think that's big, but it's not giving us an income. And so sometimes I'm questioning my own judgment because I see people on social media with bigger numbers than us who are sitting in their bedrooms explaining art on a green screen, and they're doing a great job at it. I mean, I'm absolutely not knocking them. In fact, I'm knocking myself. I feel like I'm being the dumbass.
No.
Pardon my French.
No, I again say that it is more effective when you're at these places. You're actually immersing people to see a place through your perspective.
But does someone actually care about my perspective?
I think so, because I'm saying people are watching our perspective right now, and that's more enjoyable to viewers than just blah, 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 blah. History.
They're not blah, they're good at their jobs. Or hobbies or whatever.
Well,
anyway,
you know what?
So in our hotel
have
with
an
no
idea.
hot water and no conditioner, and no, like I'm literally looking like a mushroom.
Well, good thing this museum was free, right?
Too bad the rest of London isn't.
Okay, so we've been in this museum for about an hour and a half and actually haven't seen anything yet. So you want to go see some stuff?
Let's go.
I was so distracted by my own thoughts that I accidentally walked into the women's bathroom and everyone looked at me like,
Right here is the final conversation we could have about societal norms and that truly one moment where gender is a social construct because a toilet bowl looks exactly the same in either room you would have entered.
thanks for having my
Exactly
back.
the
Hey, your comment earlier about filming content in your bedroom as opposed to actually going to these places had me thinking that a lot of what you do is virtual travel and taking people on a journey and not just viewing facts. And that's why I think people are enjoying watching you more than just someone talking about artifacts in their room.
The reason why people enjoy watching your content because you're taking them on sunset hikes and gorilla treks and rhino spottings.
And that's why...
But I feel that's a bit more exclusive compared to what I do.
No, because people are going to be going to the British Museum and they don't want to just wander around like a headless chicken. They want to know what it's like.
Point that I was thinking about. So clearly, both of us have time to think in 12 seconds in the bathroom. But my
10 seconds in the women's bathroom.
But I was thinking. I mean, I keep thinking about this. Is the fact that. I mean, I'm not unique in the terms of being a content creator that creates stuff for free. I mean, most people think that everyone, just because you have big numbers, you make a lot of money of it. I make absolutely no money off creating content, and neither does hire. But, so we spend our time, we put this content together, and yeah, I get followers, but guess what? Then they forget to comment, which means that my comment sections are filled with just trolls. People that are literally on the internet giving shit to a person that has created free entertainment, and it actually there's moments where it just wears on you. And I understand why I've seen so many of my own personal favorite content creators get offline because people can get like really ratchet and they want to find complaints and criticisms about absolutely everything. And when people say, well, you have to have a thick skin, trust me, a lot of us do. And it's a really like toss up for me because I don't want to beg and plead for people to engage with my content because I know people are overloaded with something else. I just think that if someone is scrolling all day on the internet for an escape of reality, then pick one content creator a day that you like and just leave something nice for them in their comment section, because social media is all about interacting. Like they are built on engagement and interaction with your audience. If you just sit there and scroll, the entire algorithm just keeps telling itself that you're not important content to see. And then it also won't make you get hired by any company because you can't show them that you have a higher engagement. And there's a lot of people that show pretty dresses and luxury hotel rooms that are in what we call engagement groups. So they sit and text each other their links, and then they have to like and comment, and it's probably pretty easy to find out who they are because their comments are always the same. And I get that I talk about history and Hire talks about ecotourism, conservation and nature, and we create the type of content people enjoy watching. But sorry, this is a bit of a ramble, I know that.
It's okay.
But I just feel like we create content for free, but we actually get, the majority of the feedback we get is people shitting on us, at least me.
When something, comes to the mind as a commenter, when that provokes them, then their comment is more immediate as opposed to people who dislike and continue on. Because like you and I don't actively engage with the hundreds of creators we support all the time. Like that's just too much every day.
Hundreds of creators. I don't know if I support 100 creators, to be honest with you.
I think there's 100 creators I am like.
I try to engage
supporting.
as much as possible with at least some daily. That I do try. Not everyone, and that's what I'm saying. People don't need to engage with me personally. I just think if we could like get this mindset going that people in general could engage with someone, we wouldn't lose that many great content creators in the end. Because I personally have seen at least 5 this year alone, and we're in April, get offline because they just can't handle it anymore. It's too much work for too little like return on investment of their time.
So how does this loop back to how the conversation started? Maybe if you just help us out and tell us and remind us why we're actually physically in these places as opposed to
Honestly,
making the journey. Yeah.
Honestly, yeah. Like it's I get sometimes like I feel like odd comments. They're like, oh, I thought it would bother you if they comment all the time. Like it's social media. It exists on interaction, and what makes me sad is that watching people that make careers posting controversial content because it's like all publicity is great publicity. I don't live by that at all. But then it's really the age-old saying, like, if you had a good experience, you tell no one, and if you had a bad experience, you're going to tell 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but, like, we should probably reverse that.
Well, this was a nice little conversation.
All that for 12 seconds to battle.
And we still haven't seen anything in the museum. And my arm is losing circulation. So let's just, like, put a pin in that and, like, let's come back to it. Anyway, let's go see some artifacts before...
I was saying that the reason I actually got into history so much goes back to a trip to Mexico with my mother. I was 9 years old. And we went to see the Aztec and the Mayan cities. And so Aztec and Mayan culture is what really got me interested as a child. The stories of their mythology, the stories of their culture that our tour guide was telling us wildly fascinated me. And I did 2 more trips to Mexico after that. All still in an early childhood. I climbed the temples of Chichen Itza before they got close to the Republic. And I forever have such a big spot in my heart for Mayan and Aztec culture. I think it's one of the most absolutely fascinating.
But we are in a room full of these
We are in a room
artifacts.
full of Aztec and Mayan artifacts, and it's just, they're extraordinary. They are, it really like planted the seed forever of history, and from then on history became my favorite subject in school, and actually my senior year thesis in high school in history, AP history, was about the Mayans.
So we've been in the British Museum for probably 4 hours and I've yet to see a British artifact. 4 hours in and we finally made it upstairs. So that isn't a testament to how many things are in here. Look at all the Roman stuff. Tour guide Mitra.
A deer's head drinking horn made of glass. So the Romans were never as good at making metal like the Greeks were. The Greeks are unparalleled in ancient Western history with Western history of making metal, but the Romans in their glass making, exquisite. You have tiny details of handles, there's like little ribbons going down. Look at that multiple folded handles, they all look like fabric bunched together. And then like the different colors, but it's like the thinness of the glass too. It's something extraordinary. So the Romans were master glass makers, and the last vestige remaining of this legacy is, you guessed it, Venice.
The glass is so thin that if you look at it, it does tend to crack. Mitra's having a hard time focusing.
Look how amazing this mosaic is though. Are you not looking at it? Look at that detail.
I am looking at it. It's awesome. Here's
like
the thing.
pavement mosaics. Do you know how much money we would pay to have mosaics that just made on our walls today? So the Romans like, cool. So I just need to decorate my pavement outside my store. And look at this. Look at this. So this is not this is not your classical Roman tessera, which is a much more bigger, chunkier, like regular squares. So now we're going into a bit more like micro mosaics. And it gives you a different type of, it's tiny and it gives you a better sense of shading in 3D, but essentially because Rome was such a multicultural city, you couldn't just put up signs saying what you were selling or what your business was about, so you'd actually show. So this is clearly like you were selling seafood. But then we also do pavements as decorations in our homes, because while we do decorate in the winter to keep the warmth in with rugs, with tapestries, fabrics, so we take that away in the summer, but then we still want it to be decorated. So we have this extraordinarily beautiful pavements, and I'm really nerding out, aren't I?
Nerd alert, everyone. No, keep going, it's really fascinating.
They're just really amazing. So a mosaic can never be duplicated the identical way twice. So what you do is that you lay down the cement, and then you actually trace it with different color cement so that you know the pattern is going to go in. So you're not like freestyling whatever, how you're putting it down. Black and white mosaic uses black and white cement mixture, so then it's like paint by numbers. So they do the same thing with the micro tessera. So you just color with pigments, and then you kind of like trace the pattern and you put them in tiny. The tradition still exists in Italy today. It's one of the last remaining artisan handcrafts existing in Rome. Is to still make mosaics. They're very expensive though, but definitely what I would say a family heirloom purchase, because as we can see in the museums, we're looking at mosaics from 2,000 years ago, and they are perfect.
Wow, well preserved.
So beautiful.
Did Did you write that down?
Making mosaics, the beauty of mosaics, their composition, the detail that goes into mosaic is something that utterly, absolutely fascinates me. It's created of 2 layers of glass.
2 layers of glass.
Yeah, it's layering of glass. That's
Yeah? Oh, don't be camera shy.
sorry, we're using this is an amazing vase from Roman times. It's made of 2 layers of glass. So you layer glass and you create what we call a cameo effect. Cameos are made originally out of seashells in ancient Roman times to carve jewelry out of. And then the cameos became so popular, we did it all the way to the 20th century, basically made all shellfish go extinct in the whole Mediterranean. So we do not encourage you buying cameos today at all. But this is a double glass technique and it's absolutely beautiful, and it's from around the 1st century BC, 1st century AD. And this was actually found by, was it the Duke of Wedgwood? And it inspired him for a lot of his Wedgwood collections and themes. And it's just so pretty. And like here we have a cameo glass disc. So by layering glass, you're creating the same type of effect as you did when carving into a seashell, aka cameo jewelry. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm like in nerd heaven and I'm really excited. So
I'm excited for you. And most of you would just walk past this if you were at the museum, wouldn't you? Like these people. They have no idea. Completely unaware. Yeah, when you have a tour guide with you, you learn all about it.
lucky for hire.
And now I'm obsessed with this vase.
Isn't it gorgeous?
That's gonna be me this summer.
It was broken by a drunk man.
It was broken by a drunk man?
Yeah, it got broken.
Like when?
In modern time, in the 19th century, in the early 1800s,
Really?
this drunk guy smashed it into 125 pieces.
And they had to fix this?
So yeah, a museum curator spent, I think it was actually 5 months, and then he put it together. So did you know?
Why was he
that
drinking and holding this vase?
Because people were drunk and they could just walk in here, and none of the artifacts were in glass monitors back then.
Gosh, people.
Did you know that to be a museum curator in the British Museum back in the day, you had to take like tour guide worthy exams today? Like they had to explain goldsmiths' relationships to the material that they worked in and where specific art came from and in what context and what have you.
Come on, don't you guys know the rule? Don't drink and hold vases. Our plans for London keep changing. Part 4563. We were going to head outside, but we can't currently see the
We can't get any outdoor
sky.
content done.
No, it's gonna be raining for the next 2 hours. I'm seeing blistering wind outside. I'm scared to go out there. The flag is horizontal. The flag is fully horizontal in the wind. I'm so glad I have this blanket wrapped around my neck, so I'm always ready for a quick nap. That was a full day at the British Museum.
Well, to be honest, this is the first patch of like coherent blue sky we've seen since we arrived.
This is wonderful.
And we kept looking through the glass window, and at one point it was whatever was going on out here was so bad we couldn't even see the flags on the roof. So I think it was part strategy of hiding and part just enjoying it.
Turns out the weather actually wants to cooperate for a moment. This is beautiful. Amazing.
May stay this way.
Anyway, goodbye British Museum until next time.